Farmer buys sick horse out of pity, unknowingly discovering its secret. Robert Johnson was broke and alone. At 45, he had not only lost his wife to another man, but also the will to keep fighting for the small farm he'd inherited from his father in Willow Creek, deep in Kentucky. It was during a charity auction for abandoned animals in the neighboring town that his eyes met those of the spotted horse in the corner of the makeshift stable. The animal was visibly weak, its ribs showing with a gaze that seemed to have lost its spark. No one even placed a bid for the creature, which, according to the auctioneer, had been found wandering alone by the roadside. $50, Robert shouted, surprising even himself. The auctioneer, a short, heavy-set man named Hank, looked at him with surprise and relief. $50 for the spotted horse. Anyone else? Hank asked, scanning the crowd. The silence was broken only by the sound of crickets heralding dusk. Sold to the man in the blue shirt, the auctioneer declared, pointing at Robert. As he signed the transfer papers, Dr. Wilson, the event's veterinarian, approached with a worried expression on his wrinkled face. Mr. Robert, with all due respect, this animal is in very poor condition. I'm not sure he'll make it through the week. Are you sure you want to take on this responsibility? Robert looked back at the horse, which now seemed to watch him with what he could swear was gratitude. Doc, I'm not at my best either. Maybe we can help each other. The vet shook his head, handing over the paperwork and some basic medication. I'll stop by your farm in 3 days to check on him. If necessary, then we can make a more humane decision. Robert nodded, knowing exactly what the doctor meant. He took the rope serving as a lead and guided the animal to his old pickup, adapted for small livestock. The horse struggled but didn't resist as he climbed in. The whole drive back to the farm, Robert talked to the animal through the rearview mirror like he hadn't spoken to anyone in months. Hang in there, partner. My name's Robert. You need a name too. The horse whinnied softly, as if responding. How about Hope? No, too girly for you. What about Patches? Simple, but it fits. The horse whinnied again, this time a little louder. Patches it is then. By the time they reached the small farm, the sun had set. The property, once prosperous, now showed clear signs of neglect. The main house needed paint, the fences were broken in several places, and of the 5 stables, only 2 were still fit, 4 animals. Robert helped the horse out of the truck and led him to the sturdiest stable. It's not much, but it's better than where you were. We'll clean it up proper tomorrow. For now, you need food and rest. He prepared a mix of feed, water, and supplements the vet had recommended. To his surprise, the horse ate eagerly. When the meal was done, Robert pulled an old radio from his pocket and turned it on, tuning to the local station. I like hearing the news before bed, he explained to the animal. Bet you'll enjoy some music too. As a country melody filled the air, Robert began gently brushing the horse's coat. That's when he noticed something odd. The horse suddenly stopped eating and went completely still. Its eyes seemed fixed on some distant point, and a faint tremor ran through its body. What's wrong, buddy? Robert asked, concerned. The radio now played a classical piece. Robert realized the change in the horse's behavior just as the music began. Intrigued, he switched stations. The horse relaxed. It returned to its previous state, and the tension came back immediately. It was Moonlight Sonata by Beethoven. Strange. Very strange. He turned off the radio and patted the animal's neck. All right, no classical music for you. Now rest. Tomorrow will be a new day for both of us. That night, Robert slept better than he had in months. For the first time since his ex-wife Laura had left, taking their 15-year-old son Jack with her, he felt he had a purpose to save that horse, even if everyone, including himself, doubted it was possible. The next morning, he woke with the first rays of sunlight and went straight to the stable. To his surprise, Patches was standing, looking at the door as if waiting for him. Good morning, friend. I see you survived your first night. That's already a victory, isn't it? He offered fresh water and another portion of the nutrient mix. While the horse ate, Robert began cleaning the stable. That's when he noticed another curious behavior. Every time he swept near a specific corner, the horse tossed its head and stomped its hoof. Intrigued, he approached the corner and examined it carefully. There was nothing special there, just the same packed dirt floor as the rest of the stable. Still, prompted by the animal's reaction, he began digging lightly with a small shovel. About 8 inches down, he hit something hard. He dug a little more and unearthed a small metal box, the kind used to store important documents. "What's this?" he murmured to himself. The box was locked, but the mechanism was simple. With a screwdriver, Robert managed to open it. Inside were several old documents apparently related to the property, papers his father had kept, likely hidden during some past financial trouble. Among them, he found a deed for an adjacent piece of land he hadn't even known belonged to the family. It was 5 acres with a natural spring, something extremely valuable these days. "My God," he whispered, looking at the horse, which watched him intently. "You brought me luck on the very first day." The animal whinnied softly, as if understanding him. For the rest of the day, Robert devoted himself to caring for Patches with renewed enthusiasm. He gave the horse a careful bath, brushed its coat, and applied the medications prescribed by the vet. By late afternoon, he took it for a short walk around the house to get some sun and light exercise. It was during this walk that Mrs. Jenkins, his 78-year-old neighbor, appeared at the property gate. She was a small, energetic woman, known for her sharp tongue and for knowing about local happenings before they even occurred. "Robert, what kind of creature have you gotten yourself?" she asked, adjusting her thick-framed glasses. "It's a horse, Mrs. Jenkins. I bought it yesterday at the abandoned animal auction." "That much I can see, dear. What I want to know is why you'd spend money on an animal that's halfway to the grave when you can't even keep this farm running properly." Robert smiled. Mrs. Jenkins's brutal honesty was one of the few things that still amused him. "Maybe he'll help me get the farm back on its feet. I just found some old documents that might change my situation." "Documents? What documents?" The old woman's eyes gleamed with curiosity. "About some land I didn't know I owned. But let's not talk about that now. Would you like to come in for some coffee?" Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us newcomers out. Now continuing. Mrs. Jenkins accepted the invitation, and soon they were sitting on the worn-out porch of the house, drinking coffee sweetened with brown sugar. Patches was tied to a nearby post, grazing peacefully in the tall grass. "So, tell me more about this horse," the lady insisted. "Where did you find him?" According to the auctioneer, he was found wandering near the state highway, about 30 kilometers from here. "No one knows where he came from." Mrs. Jenkins observed the animal for a few seconds. "You know, Robert, this horse reminds me of something." She frowned, trying to remember. "About 2 or 3 years ago, there was a big theft of purebred animals in the area. They mainly took competition horses. It was quite a scandal back then." "You think he might be one of those horses?" asked Robert skeptically. "Look at him, Mrs. Jenkins. He's thin, sickly, doesn't look like a competition horse." "Not now, but who knows how he was before?" she shrugged. "I'm just saying there's something familiar about him." Robert nodded politely, but deep down he thought the old woman was just trying to make the story more interesting. After she left, he turned his attention to the documents he'd found. If that extra land really belonged to him, he could sell it for a good price and solve his most pressing financial problems. The next morning, he decided to investigate the area. According to the documents, it was north of his property, past a small hill. He took Patches with him, thinking the ride would do the animal good. "Come on, buddy. You brought me luck once. Who knows what else we might find?" As they neared the hill, Robert noticed the horse growing more energetic, as if recognizing the way. When they reached the top, the view took his breath away. A lush valley with a small spring forming a crystal-clear stream that wound through leafy trees. "All of this is mine," he murmured in awe. Patches whinnied and began descending the hill toward the spring. Robert followed, still stunned by the discovery. The land was far more beautiful and valuable than he'd imagined. With a spring like that, he could not only sell the property, but maybe even start some kind of water-related business. When they reached the spring, Patches drank eagerly. Robert knelt beside the animal and tasted the water himself. It was sweet and fresh, unlike any he'd had before. "This is a treasure, Patches. A real treasure." They spent hours exploring the area. Robert took photos with his old phone and made mental notes about the possibilities. As the sun began to set, he decided it was time to head back. On the way home, they were startled by a fancy pickup truck that screeched to a halt in front of them. A tall, well-dressed man stepped out of the vehicle. He looked about 50, with neatly trimmed grey hair and an air of authority in his tanned face. "Good afternoon," he said in a deep, deliberately polite voice. "Sorry to stop you like this, but I noticed that horse and got curious. Mind if I take a look?" Robert, surprised by the approach, nodded cautiously. "Sure, but he's just an ordinary horse I bought at an auction for abandoned animals." The man approached Patches, who inexplicably backed away and grew restless. "Easy, buddy," said Robert, stroking the animal's neck. "He's usually very gentle. I don't know what's gotten into him." The stranger studied the horse with analytical eyes, ignoring its agitation. "This is a Manga Larga Marchador, you know, a highly prized Brazilian breed. Even in this condition, I can see the traits. You got lucky, my friend." "Really?" asked Robert, genuinely surprised. "Absolutely. My name is Victor Blackwell." The man introduced himself, extending his hand. "I breed and trade horses. I own a stud farm about 50 kilometers from here." Robert shook the offered hand. "Robert Johnson." "This is my property," he said, vaguely pointing toward his farm. "Well, Mr. Johnson, if you're interested in selling this horse, I could offer a good price. Even in his current condition, I can see his potential." Something in Victor's tone unsettled Robert, and even more, Patches' reaction to the man left him puzzled. "I'm not thinking of selling him, actually. I'm taking care of him so he can recover." Victor smiled, but the smile didn't reach his eyes. "I see. Well, if you change your mind, here's my card. You can call me anytime." He handed over an elegant card with gold lettering. "Victor Blackwell, New Horizon Stables, breeding and trading of purebred horses." "Thank you, I'll keep it," Robert replied, slipping the card into his pocket. Victor gave the horse one more appraising look, nodded, and walked back to his pickup truck. Before driving off, he rolled down the window and said, "By the way, if you need guidance on how to properly care for that animal, I'm available. Purebred horses require special attention." With that, he accelerated and left, kicking up a cloud of dust behind him. The whole way back, Robert couldn't stop thinking about the strange encounter. Why had Patches reacted so negatively to Victor's presence? And how had the man shown up right there at that exact moment? By the time they got home, the sky was already filled with stars. Robert fed Patches and made sure he was comfortable before heading inside. As he prepared a simple dinner, the phone rang. It was Dr. Wilson, the vet from the auction. "Mr. Johnson, I'm calling to check on that horse." "Surprisingly well, Doctor. He's eating properly, and we even went for a ride today." "Really?" The surprise in the vet's voice was clear. "Well, that's unexpected. I thought by now we'd be discussing euthanasia." "Not at all. In fact, today I met a man who told me he's a Manga Larga Marchador. Is that true?" There was a pause on the other end of the line. "A man who? Someone named Victor Blackwell. Said he owns a stud farm around here." The next pause was even longer. "Mr. Johnson, be careful with that man. Victor Blackwell is known in the area for questionable practices in horse trading. There have been several complaints against him, but nothing's ever been proven." A chill ran down Robert's spine. "What kind of questionable practices?" "From animal mistreatment to suspicions of theft and fraud in competitions. Like I said, nothing's been proven, but in the equestrian world, many people avoid him." "I see. And what about the horse? Is he really purebred?" "It's possible. Manga Larga Marchador is a distinct breed. I'll stop by early tomorrow to examine him properly. If he really is a purebred, that might explain some things." "Like what?" "Like why he was found abandoned. He could have been stolen and then dumped when he got sick." Robert thanked him for the information and hung up, feeling even more intrigued by the mystery surrounding Patches. Before bed, he went to the stable to check on the horse one more time. He found him lying comfortably in the straw, but awake, as if standing guard. "You're full of secrets, aren't you, buddy?" he murmured, stroking the horse's neck. "Don't worry, that man isn't taking you anywhere." The next morning, Robert was woken by the insistent ringing of the doorbell. Still groggy, he quickly pulled on pants and a shirt and went to answer. To his surprise, it was Mrs. Jenkins, looking extremely agitated. "Robert, I need to see that horse again," she exclaimed, not even bothering with a good morning. "Good morning to you too, Mrs. Jenkins," he replied with a half-smile. "What's going on? Why the sudden interest in Patches?" "Patches? That's what you call him?" She walked in, uninvited, heading straight for the backyard. "Where is he?" "In the stable. But what's going on?" The elderly woman didn't answer, walking determinedly toward the stable. Robert followed her, puzzled by her behavior. When they arrived, Patches was standing there, eating calmly. Mrs. Jenkins approached slowly, her eyes fixed on the animal. "I knew it," she exclaimed after observing him for a few moments. "How did I not notice before, Robert? This isn't just any horse." "Yes, I found out yesterday he's probably a Manga Larga Marchador." No, the old woman interrupted impatiently. "This is Thunder." "Thunder?" Robert repeated, confused. "Yes, one of the most famous racehorses in this region a few years ago. I'd recognize him anywhere. My late husband was fascinated by horse racing, and Thunder was his favorite." Robert looked skeptically at the thin, weakened animal in front of him. "Mrs. Jenkins, with all due respect, this horse was almost— Look here." She moved closer to the animal, who remained calm in her presence, unlike how he'd reacted with Victor. "See this star-shaped mark under the mane on the right side of his neck?" Robert stepped closer and gently pushed aside the horse's mane. Sure enough, there was a small whitish mark that vaguely resembled a star. "That could just be a common birthmark," he argued. "No, Robert. Thunder had this exact mark. It was like his signature. All the fans knew it. And look at his eyes. That intelligent gleam is unmistakable." Before Robert could respond, they heard the sound of a car approaching. It was Dr. Wilson, arriving for his promised visit. The veterinarian parked his car and walked over to them, carrying his medical bag. "Good morning," he greeted. "I see you already have company, Mr. Johnson. This is my neighbor, Mrs. Jenkins. She's convinced Patches is a famous racehorse named Thunder." Dr. Wilson studied the old woman with interest. "Thunder? The horse that disappeared after that controversy at the Kentucky Grand Prix 3 years ago?" "Exactly," Mrs. Jenkins exclaimed. Thrilled, someone confirmed her story. "Look at the star-shaped mark under the mane." The veterinarian stepped closer and examined the mark. His face showed surprise. "Well, that's interesting. I'll give the animal a full exam now. Maybe we can learn more." Over the next hour, Dr. Wilson conducted a thorough examination of Patches. He checked his teeth, eyes, hooves, and took measurements. The horse remained surprisingly cooperative the whole time. Finally, the vet put away his tools and looked at Robert with a serious expression. "Mr. Johnson, I have to admit, Mrs. Jenkins might be right. This animal has all the traits of a top-line Manga Larga Marchador. His age, physical build, even weakened as he is, and certain anatomical peculiarities match what I know about Thunder." "This is unbelievable," Robert murmured. "Are you telling me I bought a famous racehorse for $50? If this really is Thunder, he's worth far more than that. He was valued at hundreds of thousands before he disappeared." "And why did he disappear?" Robert asked, growing more intrigued. Dr. Wilson and Mrs. Jenkins exchanged meaningful glances. "There was a scandal," the vet explained. "Thunder was on an impressive winning streak when he suddenly started losing races inexplicably. Rumors spread that he was being drugged to lose. His owner at the time was—" Mrs. Jenkins began. "Victor Blackwell," the vet finished. Robert felt a chill. "The man I met yesterday." "Exactly." After suspicions began to arise, Thunder mysteriously disappeared. Blackwell claimed the animal had escaped during the night, but many believe he got rid of the horse to avoid investigations. Now I understand why Thunder got so agitated in his presence yesterday. "Did you meet with Blackwell?" asked the veterinarian, alarmed. "Yes, he showed up when we were returning from a ride. He offered to buy the horse." Dr. Wilson furrowed his brow, concerned. "This isn't good. If he recognized Thunder, he'll try to get him back at any cost." "Why? The horse obviously isn't in any condition to compete anymore." "It's not just about the animal's value. If Thunder is found and properly examined, evidence against Blackwell could surface. Thoroughbred horses have identification chips implanted, and toxicology tests might still detect traces of drugs, even after all this time. Robert looked at the horse, who watched them with expressive eyes. "What should I do then?" "For now, don't tell anyone else about your suspicions. I'll discreetly contact a friend at the Equestrian Federation to see if we can confirm the animal's identity through the chip, if it's still there." "And Victor Blackwell?" "Avoid him at all costs. If he contacts you again, be evasive. Say you're considering the offer, that you need time." Dr. Wilson performed a few more exams and left detailed instructions on how to continue Thunder's treatment. Before leaving, he looked seriously at Robert. "Be careful, Mr. Johnson. This situation could turn dangerous." After the veterinarian left, Mrs. Jenkins stayed a while longer, sharing stories about Thunder's past glories. According to her, he had been the fastest and smartest horse in the region, loved by all the local racing enthusiasts. "It's a shame what they did to him," she said, indignant. "A crime. I'll take care of him, Mrs. Jenkins. I promise." "I know you will, my boy. But now you have more than a sick horse in your hands. You have a ticking time bomb." With these troubling words, the elderly woman said goodbye, promising to keep the true identity of Patches a secret. When he was alone with the horse, Robert sat on the straw beside him. "So you're a celebrity, huh? Thunder, it suits you better than Patches at least." The horse whinnied softly and nuzzled Robert's shoulder in a gesture that seemed almost human in its affection. "Don't worry. I won't let that man near you again." In the following days, Robert intensified Thunder's care. He followed the veterinarian's instructions to the letter and researched online about the Manga Larga Machador breed and its specific needs. The animal responded well to treatment, gaining weight and vigor each day. He also began investigating the additional land he discovered was his. He visited the county clerk's office and confirmed the deed was legitimate. The area, with its valuable spring, could be the solution to his financial troubles. On the third day after the veterinarian's visit, Robert was in the stable brushing Thunder when he heard the sound of a car approaching. His heart raced as he recognized Victor Blackwell's luxury pickup truck. "Damn it," he muttered. "Stay here and don't make a sound," he instructed the horse, as if it could understand. He stepped out of the stable and closed the door, heading to meet the unwanted visitor. "Good afternoon, Mr. Blackwell," he greeted, trying to keep his voice casual. "What brings you here?" Victor smiled, that same smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I came to see if you've thought about my offer for the horse. I can increase it considerably if needed. Actually, I've been quite busy with other matters. I found some old documents showing my property is larger than I thought. I'm focused on that right now." Victor's eyes sparkled with a different kind of interest. "Documents? What kind of documents?" "A deed for an adjacent piece of land that's been in my family for generations, but was forgotten." "Interesting. Where exactly is this land?" Robert hesitated, feeling he'd said too much. "North of here. I'm still verifying the exact boundaries." Victor nodded, glancing around as if assessing the entire property. "And the horse? How is he?" "Improving little by little. The vet said he'll need a lot of time to fully recover." "Which vet?" "Dr. Wilson, the same one from the auction." A shadow flickered across Victor's face so quickly Robert almost missed it. "I see. Well, my offer for the horse still stands. In fact, I can double the initial amount I mentioned. What do you think?" "Why so much interest in a sick horse?" Robert asked bluntly. Victor smiled again, this time with a hint of condescension. "Like I said, I can see his potential even in this state. With proper care at my stud farm, he could fully recover, maybe even be good for breeding." "I'll think about it," Robert replied, non-committal. "But for now, I'm more focused on the land issue." "Maybe I can help with that too," Victor offered smoothly. "I know a lot of influential people in the area. If you need assistance with documentation or land appraisal, just say the word." "Thanks, but I'm already getting help from the county clerk's office." Victor looked toward the stable as if trying to see through the walls. "Can I take a look at the horse before I go? I'd like to see how he's progressing." "He's resting now," Robert lied. The vet advised against unnecessary disturbance. A flicker of displeasure crossed Victor's face. quickly replaced by his artificial smile. "Of course, I understand. Well, think about my offer. I'll be in touch." Robert watched the man leave, feeling a mix of relief and unease. As soon as the pickup disappeared down the dirt road, he rushed back to the stable. Thunder was restless, pacing nervously in his confined space. "Easy, boy. He's gone now." The horse whinnied, seeming relieved to see Robert. He spent the next few minutes calming the animal, speaking softly and stroking his neck. "I won't let him take you, I promise." That night, Robert struggled to sleep. The revelations of the past few days swirled in his mind like a whirlwind: a famous horse, a suspicious owner, a rediscovered valuable piece of land. It felt like his quiet life had been turned upside down in just days. In the early hours, he was jolted awake by a loud, sharp whinny from the stable. He leaped out of bed and ran outside in just his pants, barefoot. The sky was covered in dark clouds, and a strong wind blew, signaling an approaching storm. As he neared the stable, he heard Thunder whinnying insistently. "What is it, boy?" he asked, opening the door. The horse was extremely agitated, stomping, his hooves and tossing his head. When he saw Robert, he began nudging him toward the exit. "Hey, easy, what's going on?" Then a strong odor hit his nostrils. Gas! It was coming from the direction of the house. Robert sprinted back, his heart pounding. On the way, he noticed the hose from the outdoor propane tank had been deliberately cut. Without hesitation, he shut off the main valve and threw open all the windows. The smell was strong, but it didn't seem the gas had built up enough to cause an explosion. Still, he didn't risk turning on any lights or electrical devices. He returned to the stable, shaking, not just from the cold dawn air, but from the shock of realization. "You saved my life, Thunder," he whispered, hugging the animal's neck. "How did you know?" The horse was calmer now, as if understanding the danger had passed. Robert stayed by his side the rest of the night, unable to return to the house, until he was sure all the gas had dissipated. When the first rays of sun appeared on the horizon, he called the police and reported the incident. He also tried to reach Dr. Wilson, but only managed to leave a message. 2 hours later, a sheriff's department car arrived at the property. 2 officers examined the cut hose and asked several questions. "Do you have any idea who might have done this, Mr. Johnson?" one asked, while the other took photos. Robert hesitated. His suspicions fell on Victor Blackwell, but he had no concrete proof. "I'm not sure. I recently found out I own a valuable piece of land nearby. Maybe someone doesn't want me to develop it." The officers exchanged skeptical glances. "Well, we'll look into it. But without witnesses or solid evidence, it'll be hard to identify the culprit. I recommend installing security cameras if you can." After the police left, Dr. Wilson finally returned his call. Robert told him about the incident and Victor Blackwell's visit the day before. "This is very serious, Mr. Johnson," the vet said, concerned. "I need you to come into town today. I have important information about the horse, but I don't want to discuss it over the phone." "That bad?" "Let's just say my suspicions were confirmed, and if Blackwell is willing to go this far, the situation is truly dangerous." Robert agreed to meet him later that afternoon. He spent the rest of the morning reinforcing the stable's security and making sure Thunder would be okay in his absence. "I'll need to leave for a few hours, buddy. Don't worry, I'll be back soon." The horse seemed to understand, watching him with those expressive eyes that Robert now believed were truly extraordinary. Before leaving, he asked Mrs. Jenkins to keep an eye on the property. The elderly woman agreed immediately, bringing her old shotgun with her. "No one's getting near that horse while I'm on watch," she assured him with surprising determination for someone her age. Robert drove to town with his mind full of worries. Just a week ago, he was just a broke, lonely farmer with no prospects. Now he was at the center of a plot involving a famous horse, valuable land, and someone willing to break the law to get what they wanted. When he arrived at Dr. Wilson's small veterinary office, a young assistant greeted him and immediately led him to a private room in the back. "The doctor asked you to wait here. He's finishing up an appointment and will be right in." Robert nodded and sat in the offered chair. The room seemed to be used for small meetings, with a round table and 4 chairs. Diplomas and certificates hung on the walls, along with some photos of horses. One in particular caught his eye immediately, a picture of a stunning spotted horse, with the same coloring as Thunder, but far healthier and more majestic with a jockey on its back. Below the photo, a gold plaque read, "Thunder, Kentucky Grand Prix Champion 2022. He was staring at the image when Dr. Wilson entered, accompanied by an elegant woman who appeared to be in her 60s. "Mr. Johnson, thank you for coming," the vet said. "This is Dr. Helen Montgomery, former owner of Green Mountain Equestrian Academy and Thunder's true owner." The woman extended her hand to Robert, who shook it, suddenly uneasy. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Mr. Johnson," she said in a soft but firm voice. "Dr. Wilson told me about your purchase at the auction and the condition Thunder was in. I don't know how to thank you for taking care of him." "He saved my life last night," replied Robert, still processing the information. "If it weren't for him, I could have—" "We know about the incident," interrupted Dr. Wilson. "The police contacted us because I mentioned I'd be meeting you today." The three of them sat at the table. "Doctor," Wilson placed a folder on it and opened it. "We've confirmed with absolute certainty that the horse you bought is indeed Thunder. The microchip number matches, as do all the physical characteristics. The story is complicated, and Dr. Helen can explain better." The woman nodded and looked directly at Robert. "Mr. Johnson, 3 years ago, Thunder was the best horse in the regional circuit. He was about to compete at the national level when he started losing races inexplicably. At the time, Victor Blackwell was a minority partner at the academy and managed the competitions. I began to suspect something wasn't right," she continued. "Thunder had never lost like that before. I requested toxicology tests, but before they could be done, the horse disappeared. Blackwell claimed he had run away, but I always suspected it was deliberate. Victor Blackwell showed up at my property twice since I bought the horse," said Robert. "He offered money for him and seemed very interested." "Of course he did," replied Dr. Helen bitterly. "If Thunder undergoes full testing, they'll probably find traces of banned substances. That would confirm he was drugged to lose, likely as part of a betting scheme." "Blackwell made a lot of money from Thunder's losses," added Dr. Wilson. "There were rumors he was betting against his own horse. But if you suspected, why didn't you report him?" asked Robert. "Without concrete proof, it was impossible," replied Dr. Helen. "After Thunder disappeared, the academy went into crisis. Many clients left because of the scandal. And eventually I had to close. It was a blow I never fully recovered from. There was a moment of silence as Robert absorbed all this. "So now, what happens to Thunder?" he finally asked. Dr. Wilson and Dr. Helen exchanged glances. "Legally, he still belongs to the academy, meaning Dr. Helen," the vet explained. "But it's complicated. The academy no longer exists as a legal entity, and the horse's disappearance was never fully investigated." "I'm not here to take Thunder back, Mr. Johnson," said Dr. Helen softly. "At least not right away. He's recovering under your care, and that's what matters most now. Besides, I believe your bond with him was key to his survival." "What do you suggest then?" asked Robert, feeling both relief and confusion. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now back to the story. "I have a proposal for you," replied Helen. "I'd like to help you care for Thunder properly by providing professional guidance and covering all medical and feeding costs. In return, once he's fully recovered, we could discuss a more permanent arrangement." "What kind of arrangement? Perhaps a partnership?" "Thunder can never race professionally again, but his bloodline is extremely valuable. As a stud, he could generate significant income." Robert thought for a moment. The idea of partnering with a respected professional like Dr. Helen was tempting, especially given his own shaky finances. "What about Victor Blackwell?" and he asked. "He clearly won't give up easily." "That's another issue we need to discuss," said Dr. Wilson, his expression grave. "This morning's incident shows he's willing to go to great lengths to silence you. We need concrete evidence against him," added Helen. "If we can prove Thunder was drugged under his orders and that he orchestrated the horse's disappearance, we can not only protect the horse but also get justice." "How would we do that?" he asked Robert. "First, we need to thoroughly document Thunder's current condition and collect samples for analysis. Then, with those results, we could file..." A formal complaint. But that will take time, warned the vet. And during that period, you'll be at risk, Mr. Johnson. Robert thought of his isolated farm of Thunder, of the newly discovered land. He also thought of his life these past years, empty and purposeless since his family fell apart. I'm willing to take that risk, he said finally. Thunder saved my life. The least I can do is try to save him too. Dr. Helen smiled, genuine gratitude in her eyes. Thank you, Mr. Johnson. I promise you won't regret it. We'll start a more sophisticated treatment plan for Thunder immediately. They talked for another hour, discussing practical details and laying out a plan to document Thunder's condition and gather evidence against Victor Blackwell. It was agreed Dr. Wilson would visit the farm regularly, while Dr. Helen would provide resources and expert guidance. As the meeting ended, Helen handed Robert a folder of documents. These are Thunder's original records: pedigree, competition, history, health certificates before his disappearance. Keep them safe. They're extremely valuable and could be crucial to our case. When Robert finally left the office, it was already getting dark. He drove back to the farm with a mix of determination and unease. His life had taken a completely unexpected turn, but for the first time in years, he felt he had a clear purpose. When he got home, he found Mrs. Jenkins still faithfully on guard, sitting in a chair on the porch with her shotgun in her lap. "Everything quiet here?" he asked, parking the pickup truck. "Not even a mosquito got past without my say-so," the old woman replied proudly. "How'd it go in town?" Robert briefly told her about the meeting with Dr. Helen and the plan to protect Thunder. "Knew that horse was special from the first moment I saw him," Mrs. Jenkins said with satisfaction. "My Herbert, God rest him," always said Thunder, had the soul of a person. After thanking his neighbor and making sure she got home safely, Robert went straight to see Thunder. The horse whinnied happily at the sight of him, approaching the stable fence. "Hey there, champ," Robert greeted, stroking his muzzle. "Had a long talk about you today. Seems you're quite the celebrity." He showed the horse the folder of documents, opening it to reveal old photos of Thunder in his prime. "Look at that, it's really you. What a fine figure you were. We'll get you back to that, I promise." That night before bed, Robert carefully reviewed all the documents in the folder. There were certificates from major competition wins, newspaper clippings celebrating the horse's achievements, and detailed medical records. But one document in particular caught his eye, a family tree showing Thunder's lineage. According to the paper, he descended directly from a rare and prized line of Manga Larga Marchador horses, considered among the finest in the United States. At the bottom of the page, a handwritten note read, "Last direct descendant of Black Thunder, priceless genetic heritage." Along with it, there was a reference to additional documents kept in a bank vault. Intrigued, Robert set the papers aside and prepared for bed. Before lying down, he checked all the doors and windows one more time, now acutely aware of the possibility of another, unwanted, visit. The next morning, he woke up early and went straight to the stable. To his surprise, he found Thunder methodically moving small stones on the dirt floor with his muzzle, forming a strange pattern. "What are you doing, buddy?" he asked, watching curiously. The horse stopped when he noticed him, but the pattern was already clear. The stones formed what looked like the letter E. Robert frowned, puzzled. It could be a coincidence, of course, but something about the horse's steady gaze made him doubt it. "Are you trying to tell me something, Thunder?" In the following days, Robert began observing the horse's behavior more closely. He noticed that Thunder often moved objects in what seemed like a deliberate way, pushing empty buckets to a specific corner, lining up pieces of straw, and continuing to arrange small stones in patterns that vaguely resembled letters. Fascinated, he decided to test a theory. He drew 3 simple shapes on the stable floor with a stick: a circle, a square, and a triangle. Then he placed 3 buckets of water in different spots. "Thunder, if you understand what I'm saying, touch the circle with your muzzle and then go to the bucket closest to the door." To his astonishment, the horse stared at the drawings for a few seconds, then precisely touched the circle with his muzzle before walking to the indicated bucket and taking a sip of water, as if confirming he'd understood the task correctly. With his heart racing, Robert repeated the test several times, changing the shapes and instructions. The horse got it right almost every time, only making mistakes when the instructions became too complex. Haunted by this discovery, Robert set up a simple camera in the stable, aimed at the spot where Thunder usually arranged stones and other objects. He set it to record overnight while the horse was alone. The next morning, he anxiously reviewed the footage. What he saw left him breathless. During the night, Thunder had systematically moved small stones and pieces of wood, forming patterns that, when seen in sequence, clearly spelled out the letters H, E, L, P, the English word for help. Robert sat down in the straw, stunned. This went far beyond normal animal intelligence. Thunder wasn't just recognizing patterns or responding to commands, he was actively trying to communicate. He decided to call Dr. Wilson and Dr. Helen immediately to share his discovery. Both listened with initial skepticism, but promised to visit the farm as soon as possible to see for themselves. "I know it sounds crazy," Robert insisted on the phone, "but I have the recordings. He's clearly trying to communicate something." Before they could arrive, however, Robert received another visit, Victor Blackwell, accompanied by two men he introduced as agricultural consultants. "I've come to make a new offer for your land and the horse," Victor announced with his artificial smile. "A complete package, I believe, is very generous." Robert, now fully aware of the true nature of the man standing before him, remained cautious. "I'm sorry, but I'm not interested in selling either the land or the horse right now." Victor's smile vanished, replaced by a hard expression. "Mr. Johnson, let's be direct. I know you've discovered who the horse really is. I also know you've been in contact with Helen Montgomery. Let me warn you, you're stepping into a minefield." "Are you threatening me?" asked Robert, keeping his voice steady despite the fear he was starting to feel. "I'm offering you a clean way out. Enough money to start over somewhere. Hell's far from all this mess. It's a generous and temporary offer. And if I refuse—" Victor shrugged, a deliberately casual gesture. "Accidents happen on isolated farms like this one. Gas leaks, stable fires, tragic but common. The threat was clear." Robert felt a wave of anger replace his fear. "I think you'd better leave my property now, Mr. Blackwell. Think it over, Johnson. You have until tomorrow to reconsider. After that, I can't guarantee your safety, or the horses." With those words, Victor and his consultants left, leaving Robert trembling with fury and dread. As soon as they were gone, he rushed to the phone and called the police, reporting the explicit threat. He also contacted Dr. Wilson and Dr. Helen, informing them about Victor's ultimatum. "Don't stay alone tonight," the veterinarian advised. "We'll try to get there as soon as possible, but it might take a few hours. Call someone you trust to stay with you in the meantime." Robert called Mrs. Jenkins and two farmhands from the area who occasionally helped him on the farm. He explained the situation without going into too much detail, just mentioning that he had received threats related to the horse and the land. While waiting, he checked the camera in the stable. Thunder was restless, pacing nervously in the confined space. He seemed to sense the tension in the air. "Everything's going to be all right, buddy," Robert promised, stroking his neck. "I won't let anything happen to you." The next few hours were the most tense of his life. With Mrs. Jenkins and the two farmhands, he organized a sort of vigil around the property. A rural officer was also assigned to keep an eye on the place, but warned he couldn't stay all night due to staffing shortages. When Dr. Wilson and Dr. Helen finally arrived, it was almost midnight. They brought with them a man introduced as Michael Harrison, a private investigator specializing in equestrian fraud. "We need to document everything right now," Michael said, wasting no time on lengthy introductions. The recordings of the horse's behavior, the documents, the threats received. All of this could be crucial for building a solid case against Blackwell. Robert showed everyone the recordings. Even in the low-quality video, Thunder's deliberate actions were impressive. The horse was clearly trying to communicate something, moving objects to form patterns resembling letters. "This is extraordinary," Dr. Helen murmured, watching in fascination. "I always knew Thunder was exceptionally intelligent, even for a top-lineage Mangalaga marchador, but this goes beyond anything I've ever seen. The question now is, what is he trying to communicate?" Dr. Wilson asked. "Help is obvious, but is there more?" Maybe he's trying to tell us where to find evidence against Blackwell, Michael suggested. If he witnessed illegal activities during the time he was missing. The sentence hung in the air, opening possibilities no one had considered before. We need to find a more direct way to communicate with him, Robert said. I've been doing some simple tests with shapes and basic commands, but maybe we can develop something more sophisticated. Dr. Helen nodded. There are methods used to communicate with specially trained horses. We could adapt them for this situation. The next few hours were spent developing a rudimentary communication system. Using large lettered cards with simple symbols, they managed to establish a basic code. Thunder would nudge specific cards to answer yes or no to direct questions. It was a slow and often frustrating process, but little by little they pieced together a narrative. Through the horse's responses, they discovered he had been kept in an isolated location after his disappearance, likely to hide evidence of doping. Later, when he no longer served Blackwell's purposes, he was simply abandoned on the road, left to either perish or never be found. That explains his terrible condition when he arrived at the auction, remarked Dr. Wilson. He must have wandered for days, maybe weeks, before being found. But how did he survive so long on his own? Asked Mrs. Jenkins, who watched. Everything with awe. And how did such a valuable horse go unrecognized by anyone? His appearance was completely different, explained Dr. Helen. Thin, filthy, lacking proper care. Plus, Thunder had a distinctive mark on his chest, a white star-shaped patch, which seems to have been deliberately disfigured. Upon closer inspection, they could indeed see a scar on the chest where, according to old photos, the star-shaped mark should have been. Blackwell really went out of his way to make sure he wouldn't be recognized, murmured Michael, taking detailed notes. This shows premeditation and awareness of the illegality of his actions. As they worked, Robert noticed Thunder seemed eager to direct their attention to something specific. The horse repeatedly looked at a spot on the regional map they had, spread on the stable floor. I think he's trying to show us something here, said Robert, pointing to the location. It was an area near the spring he had rediscovered on his property. We'll check it out first thing tomorrow, decided Michael. For now, we need to ensure everyone's safety. Blackwell gave an ultimatum for today, and we can't let our guard down. They organized shifts to keep watch through the night. Robert insisted on taking the first shift alongside Michael. Dr. Helen and Dr. Wilson would rest briefly before taking over in the early morning hours. As they kept watch over the farm, Robert and Michael spoke quietly. How did you get involved? In this kind of work? Asked Robert, curious about the investigator. Michael gave a half smile, his watchful eyes scanning the surroundings. I used to be a jockey, he replied. Raced in the same circuit as Thunder, but in a different category. Saw plenty of shady practices over the years. After an accident, ended my career. I decided to use my knowledge of the industry to fight fraud and animal abuse. And Victor Blackwell? Did you know him? Oh yeah. Blackwell has a notorious reputation. Many suspect his methods, but he's slippery, has powerful connections and always manages to slip away. This case, he gestured toward Thunder, who stood sleeping in a corner of the stable, might be our best shot at finally catching him. They talked a while longer until it was time to switch shifts with Dr. Wilson and Dr. Helen. Robert was exhausted, but his mind was too restless for sleep. Get some rest, insisted Dr. Helen. Tomorrow will be a crucial day. Reluctantly, Robert headed to the house while the others continued the watch. He lay down fully dressed on the bed, intending only to close his eyes for a few minutes. Instead, he fell into a deep sleep. He was jolted awake by the sound of raised voices and a loud whinny. He leaped from the bed and rushed outside. The sun was barely rising, and a thick fog covered the farm. Through the mist, he saw figures moving near the stable. His heart raced when he recognized the silhouette of Victor Blackwell, accompanied by the same two men from the day before. They were arguing with Dr. Wilson and Michael. Dr. Helen stood at the stable door as if guarding the entrance. Inside, Thunder neighed anxiously. Robert ran toward them, stumbling on the uneven ground. "What's going on here?" he shouted. Victor turned to him with a cold smile. "Ah, finally awake, Mr. Johnson. I was just explaining to your friends that I've come to claim what's rightfully mine." "You have no right to Thunder," Dr. Helen interjected furiously. I have all the documents proving legal ownership. Documents can be challenged, Victor replied dismissively, especially when there are suspicions of fraud on the part of the rightful owner. That's outrageous, Dr. Wilson exclaimed. You're the one who's always been involved in fraud. Victor remained unmoved. I have a preliminary court order here, he said, waving a paper. It authorizes me to take temporary custody of the animal until the ownership dispute is legally resolved. Signed by Judge Harrington this morning. Michael examined the document with a frown. How did you get this so early? The courts haven't even opened yet. Judge Harrington is an old friend, Victor replied with a mocking smile, very understanding when it comes to protecting valuable property. This is a sham, Dr. Helen protested. I'll challenge it immediately. Be my guest. But in the meantime, I'm taking the horse. Victor gestured to his companions, who began moving toward the stable. Robert stepped beside Dr. Helen, blocking the entrance. You're not taking Thunder anywhere, he said, with a firmness that surprised even himself. The tension was palpable. Victor and his men on one side, Robert and his allies on the other, with only a few feet separating them. Inside the stable, Thunder continued to neigh, now more loudly. At that critical moment, the sound of approaching sirens cut through the air. Everyone turned toward the road, where 2 police cars appeared, followed by a van with the State Animal Protection Department logo. Victor looked momentarily thrown off. What is this? Michael smiled. I took the liberty of making a few calls last night. Seems some people are very interested in talking to you, Blackwell. The vehicle stopped, and several officers stepped out, accompanied by 2 inspectors from the Animal Protection Department and, surprisingly, a news crew from a regional TV station. What's going on here? Asked the officer who seemed to be in charge. Michael stepped forward. Officer Davis, thank you for coming. As I explained on the phone, we have substantial evidence of fraud, animal cruelty, and possibly extortion and threats. Victor tried to intervene. This is ridiculous. I have a court order. Issued improperly, it seems, Michael interrupted. Judge Harrington has been notified of a potential conflict of interest in this case. I doubt that document holds any legal weight now. As the argument continued, Robert noticed Thunder had calmed down. The horse now watched intently through the partly open stable door, as if understanding his fate was being decided. The next few minutes were filled with intense negotiation. Victor tried to use his influence and connections, making calls and issuing veiled threats. But the presence of the press and the Animal Protection Department inspectors complicated his plans. Finally, after consulting superiors over the radio, Officer Davis reached a decision. Until this situation is legally resolved, the animal will remain in Mr. Johnson's custody, but under official supervision from the State Animal Protection Department. No one is authorized to remove him from the property without a valid court order, reviewed by the full bench, not just by a single judge. Victor was furious, but restrained himself in front of the cameras. This isn't over. You have no idea who you're dealing with. With those threatening words, he and his companions left, closely watched by the police. When the dust settled, Robert, Dr. Wilson, Dr. Helen, and Michael gathered in the stable with Thunder. The horse seemed strangely calm, as if he understood. The immediate crisis had been averted. That was just the first round, Michael warned. Blackwell won't give up easily. We need to strengthen our case as quickly as possible. And we need to check that spot on the map Thunder pointed to, Robert reminded them. There might be something there that can help us. Dr. Helen nodded. Let's organize a small expedition. But first, we need to make sure Thunder is safe. The State Animal Protection Department will leave an inspector here, but it'd be good to have someone we trust too. Mrs. Jenkins, who had watched the whole commotion from a distance, stepped forward. I'll stay. No one's getting past me. To reach this horse. Her determined tone drew smiles from the exhausted group. The elderly woman might have seemed frail, but she had admirable inner strength. While Dr. Wilson stayed behind with Mrs. Jenkins and the department inspector to care for Thunder, Robert, Dr. Helen, and Michael prepared to investigate the spot the horse had indicated. It's near the spring I found, Robert explained, consulting the map. It's a short trip, but the terrain is rough. Equipped with flashlights, small shovels, and their phones for documentation, The trio set out right after breakfast. The hike took about half an hour, with Robert guiding the group through increasingly dense vegetation. When they reached the approximate location, they stopped to get their bearings. "It should be around here," Robert said, looking around. "But what exactly are we looking for?" "Anything unusual," Michael replied. "A place that could serve as a hideout. Marks on the ground, signs of recent human activity." Dr. Helen walked slowly, examining the soil. "That rock formation looks promising." She pointed to a small rise a few feet away. "It could serve as a landmark." They approached cautiously. The formation consisted of several large rocks, creating a sort of natural shelter. Robert remembered passing by there during his initial exploration with Thunder, but hadn't paid much attention at the time. Michael began methodically examining the area around the rocks, while Dr. Helen checked for possible entrances to the natural shelter. Robert stood watching, trying to imagine what Thunder might have wanted to show them here. That's when he noticed something. Several small, uniform stones arranged on the ground near the shelter's entrance. The pattern was very similar to the ones Thunder had created in the stable. "Look at this," he called, pointing to the arrangement. Michael and Helen hurried over. "It looks deliberate," Michael remarked, crouching to examine it closer. "Almost like an arrow," Helen added, following the direction the stones pointed with her gaze. The arrow led to a gap between two large rocks. Robert approached and carefully reached his hand into the opening. His fingers touched something metallic. "There's something here," he said, pulling out the object. It was a small metal box similar to the one he'd found buried in the stable, but smaller and more modern. It was locked with a simple padlock. "This is surprising," Helen murmured. "How could Thunder have known about this?" "Maybe he was brought here during his captivity," Michael suggested. "Horses have excellent spatial memory." Robert examined the padlock. "It's simple. We can open it easily." Using a small multi-tool that Michael carried, they managed to force the padlock open. Inside the box, they found several carefully folded documents and a flash drive. "What do we have here?" murmured Michael, unfolding the papers with care. As they examined the documents, their faces lit up with understanding and excitement. They were detailed records of bets, results of rigged races, and most importantly, chemical formulas for doping substances used on the horses. "This is pure dynamite," said Michael, photographing each document with his phone. "Concrete proof of an organized race-fixing scheme with names, dates, amounts, and Blackwell is at the center of it all." "But why would someone hide this here?" questioned Robert. "And how did Thunder know?" Helen furrowed her brow, thoughtful. "He probably wasn't meant to know. But if he was kept hidden around here during his disappearance, he might have seen someone hiding the box. Or he could have been used as unknowing transport," added Michael. "It wouldn't be the first time. Smugglers used animals to carry valuable items in remote areas." Whatever the explanation, the discovery was extraordinary. They carefully stored the documents and flash drive back in the box and began their return journey, eager to share their findings with Dr. Wilson. As they neared the farm, they saw more cars parked at the entrance. One belonged to the police, but there was also an official vehicle from the American Equestrian Federation. "Seems things are moving quickly," remarked Dr. Helen. When they arrived, they found Dr. Wilson speaking with two representatives from the Federation. Seeing the group return, he gestured excitedly. "You won't believe it. The Federation has suspended Victor Blackwell as a precaution and opened a formal investigation into Thunder's disappearance." "And we have something that will speed up that investigation," replied Michael, holding up the box. In the following minutes, they explained their discovery and showed the documents to the Federation representatives, who were visibly impressed by the evidence. "This goes far beyond what we expected to find," said one, flipping through the papers. "We're looking at a systematic fraud scheme that could involve dozens of races and competitions over the past few years." "And Thunder was just one of the victims," added the other representative. "There are references here to at least 6 other high-value horses that were doped or mysteriously disappeared." The police officer present requested the original documents as evidence, but allowed copies to be made first. The flash drive was handed to Michael for immediate analysis on his laptop. While the adults discussed the legal implications of the discovery, Robert went to the stable to see Thunder. The horse seemed calm, watching him with those intensely intelligent eyes. "You knew all along, didn't you?" murmured Robert, stroking his neck. "How you tried to show us from the very beginning." Thunder whinnied softly, nuzzling Robert's shoulder in a gesture of familiarity that had become common between them. "Thank you, friend. You didn't just save my life. You're helping bring justice." The following days were a whirlwind of activity. The investigation against Victor Blackwell gained momentum, with more evidence emerging from the documents and data found. The flash drive contained incriminating photos and videos, including scenes of horses being injected with unknown substances before competitions. The local press and eventually national media began covering the case, referring to it as the horse that spoke. The story of how Thunder had tried to communicate and led his caretakers to hidden evidence captured the public's imagination. Equine behavior experts came from all over the country to observe and test Thunder's communication skills. Some remained skeptical, attributing his actions to coincidences or an overly anthropomorphic interpretation by humans. Others, however, were genuinely impressed by his ability to understand and respond to complex commands. Meanwhile, Victor Blackwell was temporarily detained for questioning but released on bail. His licenses for breeding and trading horses were suspended, and his reputation suffered a devastating blow. For Robert, the events brought unexpected changes to his life. His farm, once on the brink of bankruptcy, suddenly became a point of interest. Journalists, researchers, and curious onlookers appeared regularly, wanting to see the horse that could talk. Some even offered money just to observe Thunder for a few minutes. Dr. Helen, seeing the potential in the situation, proposed an ambitious idea. "Robert, have you thought about turning part of your property into a recovery center for abused horses?" The suggestion caught him off guard. "A recovery center? I don't have the resources for that." "I do," she replied simply, "and I'm willing to invest. With your connection to Thunder and my expertise, we could create something truly special. We'd use innovative communication and treatment methods, with Thunder as our symbol and inspiration." The idea was bold, but the more Robert thought about it, the more sense it made. The extra land with the spring would be perfect for such a project. Plus, it would give him a new purpose in life, something he'd lost when his family fell apart. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, back to the story. "I'm in," he finally decided, "but on one condition. I want to remain Thunder's primary caretaker. We've formed a special bond and I don't want to lose that." "I wouldn't expect anything less," Helen smiled. "In fact, it's essential that you stay his main caretaker. The bond between you two is extraordinary and could be the key to developing new communication methods for traumatized horses." In the following weeks, plans for the Thunder Equine Recovery Center began to take shape. Architects were hired to design modern, humane facilities. Animal behavior specialists were consulted on the best treatment and rehabilitation methods. The case against Victor Blackwell grew stronger as more witnesses came forward, including former employees who confirmed fraudulent practices and animal abuse. Judge Harrington, who had issued the questionable warrant, was also investigated for possible corruption and conflicts of interest. As for Thunder, he continued to amaze everyone with his intelligence and adaptability. The rudimentary communication system they'd developed evolved into something more sophisticated, using colored symbols and even a simplified version of sign language adapted for horses. The press remained fascinated by the story. A documentary about Thunder was being produced by a national network, and several universities expressed interest in studying his cognitive abilities. Amid all the commotion, Robert received an unexpected call. "Dad, it's Jack." His son's voice, which he hadn't heard in over a year, caught him completely by surprise. "Jack? Son, is that really you?" "Yeah, Dad, I saw you on TV talking about the horse. You seemed happy." Robert felt a lump in his throat. "I am, son. Things have changed a lot around here." There was a pause on the other end of the line. I was thinking maybe I could come visit you to see this famous horse if everything's all right. Of course everything's all right, Robert replied, his voice thick with emotion. You can come whenever you want. The house will always be yours too. The visit was scheduled for the following weekend. Robert spent the days preparing the house with an enthusiasm he hadn't felt in years. He cleaned Jack's room, which had remained practically untouched since his departure, and planned meals with his favorite dishes. When the day finally arrived, Robert waited anxiously on the porch. The taxi appeared on the dirt road just after noon, kicking up a cloud of dust. Out stepped a tall, lanky teenager carrying a worn-out backpack. Jack had grown in the past year, looking more grown up than Robert remembered. "Hi, Dad," he said, shyly, standing a few feet away. Robert couldn't hold back his emotions. In a few quick steps, he was hugging his son tightly. "It's so good to see you, son, really good." The hug, stiff at first from Jack's side, slowly turned into something genuine. When they finally pulled apart, both had tears in their eyes. "Come inside, I made your favorite lunch," Robert said, taking his son's backpack. Over the meal, conversation flowed more easily than either had expected. Jack talked about his life in the city with his mother and stepfather. He was doing well in school and considering studying veterinary medicine at the university. "That's why I got so interested when I saw the news about the horse," he explained. "It's like something out of a movie." "Thunder really is special," Robert confirmed. "I've never seen anything like him. Want to meet him after lunch?" Jack nodded eagerly. When they finished eating, Robert led him to the stable, where Thunder was being examined by Dr. Wilson for his weekly checkup. "Ah, you must be Jack," the vet said, extending his hand. "Your father talks about you a lot." Jack shook the offered hand, but his eyes were fixed on the majestic horse. Thunder, in turn, watched the newcomer with obvious interest. "He's amazing," Jack murmured, stepping forward cautiously. "You can get closer," Robert encouraged. "He's very gentle with people who mean no harm." Jack took a few more steps, now less than a yard from Thunder. The horse lowered his head as if studying the young man. "Hi, Thunder," Jack said softly. "I'm Jack, Robert's son." To everyone's surprise, Thunder immediately stretched out his neck and gently pressed his muzzle against Jack's shoulder, the same affectionate gesture he often gave Robert. "Wow," Jack exclaimed, looking at his father in amazement. "He really understands." "Seems like it," Robert replied, equally surprised. "He's usually not this welcoming with strangers." Dr. Wilson watched the scene with professional interest. "Fascinating. He might be sensing the family bond between you. Horses have an extremely keen sense of smell and can detect genetic similarities." Over the next few days, Jack spent hours with Thunder, quickly learning the communication system they had developed. The young man had a natural talent with the animal and soon suggested improvements to the method. "What if we use different colors to represent emotions?" he proposed one evening at dinner. "Horses can distinguish basic colors, right?" "Yes, to some extent," Robert confirmed, impressed by his son's interest and knowledge. "That's an excellent idea." The one-week visit stretched into 2, then 3. Jack called his mother, asking permission to stay longer. "I'm helping with the recovery center project, Mom," Robert overheard him explain on the phone. "It's an incredible experience for someone who wants to study veterinary medicine." To Robert's delight, Laura agreed to let Jack stay until the end of the school break, on the condition that he wouldn't neglect his studies. Robert promised himself he'd do everything possible to ensure his son kept up with his academic responsibilities. Jack's presence brought new energy to the farm and the recovery center project. His youth and enthusiasm were contagious, affecting everyone around him, including Dr. Helen, who quickly grew fond of the teenager. "Your son has a natural gift for this, Robert," she remarked after watching Jack work with Thunder. "He could have a bright future in animal-assisted therapy or equine behavior." The comment filled Robert with fatherly pride. Seeing Jack discover a possible calling, especially one that might keep him close, was more than he'd dared to dream when he woke up on that fateful auction morning just a few weeks ago. As July progressed, construction on the Thunder Equine Recovery Center officially began. The groundbreaking ceremony was a small local event, but drew regional media coverage. Robert, Jack, Dr. Helen, and Thunder were the stars of the photos, with the horse surprisingly cooperative for the cameras. Meanwhile, Victor Blackwell was facing serious legal trouble. Beyond charges related to competition fraud and animal cruelty, he was now under investigation for attempted extortion and threats. Several of his former employees had turned state's witnesses, revealing a systematic pattern of illegal practices spanning years. "He'll probably strike a deal with the district attorney's office," explained Michael, who was closely following the case. "But his career in the equestrian world is definitely over." For Thunder, each day brought new progress in his physical recovery and his astonishing communication skills. Dr. Wilson was amazed by the speed of his improvement. "I've never seen anything like it. It's like he's determined to prove he can fully recover." As his body grew stronger, his attempts at communication became more complex and sophisticated. With Jack's help, they developed a system where Thunder could spell simple words by nudging letter cards with his muzzle. One particularly memorable day, he clearly spelled out THANKYOU, leaving everyone present deeply moved. His ability to express gratitude so directly and unmistakably was a milestone that challenged many established notions about animal cognition. "He truly understands the concept of gratitude," Dr. Helen murmured, tears in her eyes. "This goes far beyond conditioned behavior." News of this extraordinary feat quickly spread, attracting even more attention from the scientific community. A respected animal behavior researcher from the State University requested permission to conduct more formal studies with Thunder. "We need to document this properly, with rigorous scientific methods," she explained during her initial visit. "It could represent a significant breakthrough in our understanding of equine cognition." Robert agreed to the studies on the condition that they wouldn't stress Thunder or interfere with his ongoing recovery. The research team was gently integrated into the horse's routine, always following Robert, Jack, and Dr. Helen's guidance on how best to interact with him. Meanwhile, construction on the recovery center progressed quickly. The main structure was already up, and the specialized stables were taking shape. The natural spring was incorporated into the design, creating a small artificial pond where recovering horses could eventually swim as part of their physical therapy. One afternoon, while Robert was overseeing the construction work, he received an unexpected visitor. An elderly man, simple yet dignified in appearance, approached hesitantly. "Excuse me, are you Robert Johnson, the owner of Thunder?" Robert turned, intrigued. "Yes, that's me. How can I help you?" The man removed his straw hat, holding it respectfully against his chest. "My name is Joseph Miller. I used to be a groom at Mr. Blackwell's stud farm a few years back. I came because I need to tell you something about Thunder." Robert immediately grew alert. This could be a trap, an attempt by Victor Blackwell to get information or access to the horse. "How do I know you're not still working for Blackwell?" The man nodded, understanding the suspicion. "That's a fair question. I have this." He handed over a yellowed envelope. Inside was a letter signed by Michael, the investigator, confirming that Joseph had come forward as a voluntary witness against Victor Blackwell and was cooperating with the authorities. "Michael suggested I speak directly with you. There are things about Thunder that no one else knows." Feeling more at ease, Robert invited the man to sit in the shade of a tree. Jack soon joined them, curious about the visitor. "This is my son, Jack," Robert introduced. "You can speak freely in front of him." Joseph nodded and began his story. "I worked for Mr. Blackwell for nearly a decade. At first, he wasn't so difficult, but over time, he became obsessed with winning at any cost. When Thunder arrived at the stud farm, we were all amazed. We'd never seen an animal with so much potential." The man paused, his eyes lost in distant memories. "For the first few months, everything went well. Thunder won practically every competition. Blackwell was thrilled. But then something changed. He started receiving visits from men we'd never seen before, closed-door meetings. Soon after came the orders to give Thunder special supplements before certain races." "The doping substances," Robert murmured. "Exactly. We grooms knew they were drugs to make the horse lose, but who dared to question it? Thunder started losing races where he was the clear favorite. Blackwell pretended to be furious, but behind the scenes he was celebrating. He was making fortunes by betting against his own horse. Jack listened, horrified. That's awful. How could anyone do that to such a special animal? Joseph shook his head sadly. Greed does terrible things to people, young man. But then trouble came. Dr. Helen started asking questions. She requested independent tests. Blackwell panicked. And that's when Thunder disappeared, Robert finished. Yes, but it wasn't an escape like Blackwell claimed publicly. He ordered me and another groom to take Thunder to a remote property. We were supposed to keep him hidden until the scandal blew over. Then Joseph hesitated, visibly disturbed. We were supposed to get rid of him permanently. A chill ran down Robert's spine. But you didn't do it. I couldn't. The old man's eyes filled with tears. I've spent my whole life caring for horses. The thought of harming Thunder was unbearable. So one night, while the other groom was asleep, I opened the stable. I gave Thunder a hard slap on the rear and sent him running. He seemed to understand. He looked at me for a moment, as if thanking me, and then vanished into the darkness. That's why he was so weak when they found him, Jack said. He'd been loose for a long time. Nearly 2 months, from what I heard. I lost my job, of course. Blackwell suspected I'd freed the horse, though he could never prove it. He threatened me, but what more could he take from me? He had already taken my dignity by forcing me to be part of that awful scheme. Robert reached out and squeezed the man's shoulder. You saved his life, Mr. Joseph. Don't doubt that. For a second, Joseph discreetly wiped away a tear. When I saw on TV that Thunder had been found and was recovering, I couldn't believe it. I thought he might have not survived alone in the wild. It was like a miracle. Would you like to see him? Jack offered impulsively. The old man's eyes lit up. May I? It would be an honor. The three walked to the stable where Thunder now spent only part of the day, as he was strong enough to graze freely in a special paddock. The horse was in the stable at that moment, eating quietly. When Joseph approached, Thunder abruptly lifted his head. For a long moment, horse and man stared at each other in silence. Then, to Robert and Jack's astonishment, Thunder let out a soft whinny and quickly moved toward the fence, stretching his neck toward the visitor. He remembers me, Joseph whispered, moved, after all this time. He extended a trembling hand and stroked the animal's muzzle. Thunder closed his eyes, seemingly savoring the touch. Horses have an excellent memory for people who treated them well, or poorly, Robert remarked, watching the scene with fascination. Joseph spent some time with Thunder, telling Robert and Jack stories of the horse's glory days. How he loved green apples, his peculiar habit of always circling the stable 3 times before lying down. How he seemed to understand complex commands, even before any formal training. I always knew he was special, far beyond his skills as a racer, the old man concluded. There's something about him, something I can't explain. Before leaving, Joseph handed Robert a small, worn notebook. I kept a detailed record of everything. The drugs Blackwell ordered to be administered, the fixed races, the people involved. Maybe it'll help the investigation. Robert accepted the notebook, recognizing its potential value. Thank you for coming here, Mr. Joseph. Your testimony and this information will be very useful. If you need me to testify formally, I'll be available. I'm not afraid of Victor Blackwell anymore. He's already taken everything from me. After the former handler left, Robert gave the notebook to Michael, who immediately recognized its importance. This is exactly what we needed. An insider's testimony, someone directly involved in carrying out Blackwell's orders. With this, we can significantly strengthen the case against him. The following weeks brought important developments on multiple fronts. The investigation into Victor Blackwell gained renewed momentum thanks to the evidence Joseph provided. The Abe Recovery Center was nearly complete, with its opening scheduled for the next month. And Thunder continued to surprise everyone with his physical recovery and cognitive abilities. One day, as Robert and Jack worked with Thunder on the communication system, the horse began displaying unusual behavior. He seemed restless, repeatedly looking toward the horizon in the direction of the main road. What is it, buddy? Robert asked, trying to understand what was troubling the animal. Thunder trotted to the letterboard and began tapping his muzzle in a sequence, M-A-R-E. Mare? Jack repeated, confused. He's saying mare? Robert frowned. I think so. But what? Before he could finish, they heard the sound of an approaching vehicle. It was Dr. Wilson arriving for his weekly visit. But he wasn't alone. In the adapted bed of his pickup truck was a thin, visibly weakened mare. Robert! Jack! The vet called as soon as he parked. I need your help. They rushed to help. The mare was in deplorable condition, even worse than Thunder when Robert had bought him at the auction. What happened? Asked Robert as he helped unload the animal from the vehicle. She was found wandering near the state highway, almost the same spot where Thunder appeared, explained Dr. Wilson while checking the mare's vital signs. Someone recognized the similar coat pattern and called me right away. They led the weakened animal to an empty stable where Dr. Wilson could examine her properly. To everyone's surprise, Thunder followed the group, appearing extremely agitated. He seemed to know she was coming, remarked Jack, amazed. How is that possible? Dr. Wilson didn't have an immediate answer, more concerned with the mare's critical condition. She's severely malnourished and dehydrated. There are multiple infected wounds and I suspect pneumonia. Honestly, I don't know if she'll make it through the night. Robert looked at Thunder, who was watching the newcomer with unsettling intensity. We'll do everything we can to save her, he declared. If Thunder survived, so can she. They followed Dr. Wilson's instructions to the letter: antibiotics, IV fluids, cleaning and treating the wounds. The mare was so weak she could barely stand, but there was a determination in her eyes that strongly reminded them of Thunder. All night, Robert and Jack took turns monitoring her. To their surprise, Thunder refused to leave, keeping watch outside the stable, occasionally letting out soft whinnies as if encouraging the mare to hang on. By morning, Dr. Wilson returned and was pleasantly surprised to find the mare still alive and even a bit more alert. She's a fighter, he remarked after examining her. The next 48 hours will be critical, but I'm cautiously optimistic. As the vet continued his exam, he noticed something on the inside of the mare's ear. Look at this, he called, pointing to a nearly faded mark. It looks like a registration number similar to the one Thunder had. Carefully, he cleaned the area to see better. MM238. Definitely a Manga Larga Marchador lineage number. And if I'm right, he grabbed his tablet and quickly pulled up a database. Just as I suspected. This is Morning Star, Thunder's younger sister. She disappeared around the same time he did, but got much less media attention since she wasn't as famous in competitions. Robert and Jack exchanged stunned looks. Sister, Jack repeated. Thunder and her are siblings. That would explain why he seemed to sense her arrival, murmured Robert. Somehow he felt her presence. Dr. Wilson nodded thoughtfully. Horses have much sharper senses than we do, and the bond between siblings from the same litter can be extraordinarily strong, even after years apart. The next morning, Dr. Helen arrived in a hurry after hearing about the discovery. She examined the mare with an expert eye and confirmed the identification. It's Morning Star, no doubt. She was a potential champion, but never got the chance to prove herself. She disappeared right after Thunder started losing mysteriously. Blackwell must have gotten rid of her too when things got complicated, Robert suggested. Probably, and given her condition, I suspect she was kept in even worse conditions than Thunder all this time. In the following days, everyone took turns caring for Morning Star. Thunder became a constant presence, often positioning himself so he could watch his sister through the gaps in the stable boards. It's like he's standing guard, Jack commented after noticing the horse barely left to graze or rest. On the 5th day, Morning Star showed more consistent signs of improvement. She was eating regularly, her wounds were beginning to heal, and she could stand for longer periods. That's when they decided to allow Thunder into the stable for a controlled meeting. The moment was captured on video by Jack. Thunder entered cautiously, as if understanding his sister's fragility. He approached slowly and gently touched his muzzle to hers in a tender gesture of recognition. Morning Star, initially tense, visibly relaxed at the contact, letting out a soft whinny that Thunder immediately returned. It's like they're talking, whispered Dr. Helen, moved by the scene. From that day on, Morningstar's recovery accelerated remarkably. Thunder's presence seemed to have a therapeutic effect on her. Within 2 weeks, she was strong enough for short walks outdoors, always accompanied by her protective brother. The news of the equine siblings' reunion quickly captured the attention of local and national media. Reporters appeared daily at the farm, eager to document the inspiring story. Robert, initially reluctant about all the attention, began to realize the publicity could benefit the soon-to-open recovery center. "This story is touching people's hearts," Dr. Helen remarked after yet another news crew left the property. "It's raising awareness about animal abuse and the importance of proper rehabilitation." The center's opening date was strategically scheduled to coincide with an important hearing in the case against Victor Blackwell. The contrast between creating a space dedicated to animal welfare and exposing abusive practices would be powerful. The week before the opening, they received an unexpected visit. Laura, Robert's ex-wife, and Jack's mother. "I came to see for myself what's keeping my son so excited," she explained after the initially awkward greetings. "He talks about nothing else when we call." It was the first time Robert had seen her since their separation. Laura looked well, though a little older and more tired than he remembered. The initial tension soon gave way to cautious cordiality, largely due to Jack's mediating presence. "I want to show Mom everything, okay, Dad?" the teenager asked. Visibly happy to have both parents there. "Of course, son. Show her what we're building here." Jack led Laura on a tour of the property, enthusiastically explaining the recovery center, the communication system developed with Thunder, and the touching story of the equine siblings' reunion. When they reached the stable where Thunder and Morningstar now shared space, Laura was visibly moved. "It's amazing what you've done here, Jack. Your father must be very proud of you." "I am," Robert confirmed, having followed them at a respectful distance. "Jack has a natural talent for this. He's considering studying veterinary medicine." Laura looked at her ex-husband, then at their son, with an expression that mixed pride and something else, perhaps regret. "Your father always had a special way with animals," she said, surprising Robert. "It was one of the things I admired most about him." The unexpectedly kind remark created a moment of connection among the three. For a brief instant, they seemed like a family again. Over dinner, Laura surprised Robert even further by suggesting Jack could spend more time at the farm. "If he's truly interested in veterinary medicine, especially with a focus on large animals, this seems like an exceptional learning environment," she explained. "We could adjust the custody arrangement so he spends more time here, especially on weekends and holidays." Jack's eyes lit up. "Really, Mom, that would be amazing." Robert tried to contain his own excitement. "Are you sure, Laura? I don't want to interfere with your plans for Jack." She shrugged with a small smile. "Things change, Robert. Jack is growing up and should follow his own interests. Besides," she hesitated briefly, "it seems you've finally found your path. It's good to see." After Jack went to bed, Robert and Laura were left alone on the porch, sharing a surprisingly comfortable silence. "Thank you," he finally said, "for letting Jack be part of all this. It means a lot to me." "He's happy here," she replied simply. "Happier than I've seen him in a long time. And you seem different too, more focused, more alive." "It's like I've found a purpose again," Robert admitted. "And it wasn't just the center or the horses. It was Jack too. Having him here, seeing him care about something so deeply, it changed everything." Laura nodded in understanding. "Sometimes the greatest gifts come from the most unexpected places. Who would have thought an abandoned horse you bought out of pity would change your life like this?" Robert smiled, thinking back to how it all began. "Funny how fate works, isn't it? I was at rock bottom when I bought Thunder. Thought I was just giving a suffering animal a dignified ending. In the end, he's the one who saved me." The big day of the center's grand opening finally arrived. The farm, once run down and lonely, now buzzed with activity. Reporters, local officials, animal behavior experts, and dozens of curious onlookers filled the carefully prepared space for the event. Robert, dressed in a clean, pressed dress shirt, a rare sight for him, stood visibly nervous beside Jack, Dr. Helen, and Dr. Wilson. Even Laura had decided to stay for the opening, an unexpected but welcome presence. "There are so many people," he murmured, adjusting his collar for the 10th time. "I didn't expect this much interest." "It's an extraordinary story," Dr. Helen replied, as calm as ever, "and people need stories of hope and resilience." The ceremony was simple but moving. After brief speeches from Robert and Dr. Helen, a symbolic ribbon was cut at the entrance of the new complex. The facilities were impressive. Spacious stables designed for maximum animal comfort, exercise tracks, a small veterinary clinic equipped with cutting-edge technology, and the artificial lake fed by a natural spring, already set up for hydrotherapy. The highlight of the event, however, was Thunder's special presentation. Fully recovered, the horse, once on the brink of death, now displayed spectacular physical condition. Under Jack's gentle guidance, he demonstrated some of his communication skills, answering questions through the card system and performing a series of movements that showcased his extraordinary intelligence and coordination. At the end of the demonstration, to everyone's surprise, Morning Star was brought into the arena. Though not fully recovered, her improvement was visible. The equine siblings walked side by side in a small circuit, a moment of grace and dignity that drew emotional applause from the audience. "These two extraordinary animals will be the symbols of our center," Dr. Helen announced. "Their journey from suffering to recovery represents exactly what we hope to provide for other abused and abandoned horses." As guests explored the facilities and enjoyed the cocktail reception, Michael discreetly approached Robert. "We have important news," he said quietly. "The judge just denied Blackwell's final appeal. He'll have to appear in person at next week's hearing. And with the evidence we've gathered, including Joseph's testimony and the documents we found, the district attorney's office is confident they'll secure a conviction." Robert felt immense relief. Finally, after everything he did. "Justice may take time, but it comes," Michael said with a satisfied smile, "and in this case it was an extraordinary horse that helped make it happen." By the end of the day, as the guests began to leave and the farm slowly returned to its peaceful state, Robert found himself alone with Thunder in the stable. The horse looked tired but content, watching his human with those expressive eyes that seemed to understand far more than any animal should. "We did it, buddy," Robert said, stroking his neck. "Thanks to you, we did it." The horse gave a soft whinny and nuzzled Robert's shoulder, a gesture of affection that had become his trademark. In that quiet moment, man and animal shared an understanding that went beyond words. A few days after the grand opening, as the routine at the center began to settle, Robert received an unexpected call from Michael. "We've got a problem," the investigator said bluntly. "Blackwell's gone." "What do you mean, gone?" Robert asked, a chill running down his spine. He was supposed to appear for his hearing this morning, but he never showed. When they checked his house, it was empty. Looks like he gathered what he could and disappeared overnight. That's concerning. More than that, they found notes at his place mentioning you and the horses. The police think he might try to retaliate before leaving the country. Robert immediately thought of Thunder and Morning Star. "I'll tighten security here, and Jack, I need to make sure he's safe. The police are already on their way to your property to provide protection. But stay alert, Robert. Blackwell has nothing left to lose now." After hanging up, Robert gathered all the center's staff and explained the situation. They organized watch shifts and added extra security measures. Jack was told not to go anywhere alone and to always stay near an adult. That night, a violent storm swept through the area. Lightning split the dark sky and strong winds shook the trees around the property. Robert was in the main house with Jack, both tense and alert despite the presence of 2 officers patrolling the grounds. "Do you think he'll really try something, Dad?" Jack asked, nervously peering out the window. "I hope not, son, but we'd better be prepared." Around midnight, when the storm was at its worst, they were startled by loud, frantic whinnies coming from the main stable. Robert grabbed a flashlight and, accompanied by one of the officers, ran to check despite the pouring rain. As they approached, they spotted a shadow fleeing from the back of the stable. The officer immediately shouted for them to stop, but the figure vanished into the darkness. Inside, they found Thunder and Morning Star extremely agitated. A quick inspection revealed why. Someone had tried to set fire to a pile of hay in the corner. The heavy rain coming through the partially open windows had kept the flames from spreading. "It was Blackwell," Robert said with certainty. "He tried to burn the stable down with the horses inside." The officer immediately called for backup on the radio. Soon, several patrol cars arrived at the property, and an intensive search began. The storm complicated their efforts, but also made it harder for the intruder to escape. Robert stayed in the stable, calming the frightened horses. Jack soon joined him, ignoring the instructions to stay in the house. "I couldn't stay there alone, Dad. I had to know if they were okay." After nearly an hour of searching, they heard shouts and movement near the spring. Shortly after, a soaked police officer entered the stable. "We found Blackwell. He was trying to cross the creek when he slipped and fell. The current is strong because of the rain, but we managed to rescue him. He's injured, but alive." The news brought immense relief. Victor Blackwell was taken into custody, now facing additional charges of attempted arson and fleeing to avoid justice. His capture definitively closed the chapter of fear and uncertainty that had loomed over the recovery center. In the following weeks, life gradually returned to normal. The center welcomed its first rescued horses, 3 animals in deplorable condition found on an abandoned farm. With the experience gained from rehabilitating Thunder and Morning Star, the team was confident in their ability to help them. Jack divided his time between school in town and weekends on the farm, where he devoted himself to the center with renewed enthusiasm. His interest in veterinary medicine grew each day, now with the enthusiastic support of both parents. Robert and Laura had established a cordial relationship focused on Jack's well-being. Occasionally, she spent a day at the center, impressed by the work being done and her son's evident maturity. Thunder and Morning Star had become not just the symbols of the center, but true therapists for the other horses. Their calm presence and sociable behavior helped the new rescues adapt and trust humans again. The communication system initially developed for Thunder was adapted and implemented with the other horses, yielding promising results. University researchers continued their studies, meticulously documenting each breakthrough and discovery. 6 months after its opening, the Thunder Equine Recovery Center was already nationally recognized as an innovative institution for treating and rehabilitating traumatized horses. Veterinarians and animal behavior specialists from across the country visited the farm to learn the techniques developed there. On a quiet Sunday afternoon, Robert sat on the porch of the house, watching Jack work with one of the newly rescued horses in the nearby pen. Dr. Helen approached, holding 2 cups of coffee. "To the man who turned tragedy into triumph," she said, handing him one of the cups and sitting beside him. Robert smiled, accepting the coffee. "It wasn't me. It was Thunder who changed everything. I just followed the path he showed." "You transformed each other," Helen corrected gently. "That's how the best partnerships work." They sat in silence for a moment, watching the sunset paint the sky in golden hues over the property that, just a year before, had been abandoned and hopeless, much like its owner. "You know what amazes me most about this whole story?" Robert mused. "It's not just Thunder's extraordinary intelligence, or his ability to communicate, or even his incredible will to survive. It's his capacity to forgive." Helen looked at him with interest. "How so?" "After everything humans did to him, the doping, the abandonment, the attempts to silence him permanently, he still chose to trust. In me, in Jack, in you. He had every reason to hate humans for the rest of his life, but he chose to give a second chance. Maybe that's the real lesson Thunder came to teach us," Helen reflected. "That forgiveness and trust, even after the worst trauma, are possible. And that sometimes the path to healing lies in helping others heal too." In the pen below, as if hearing his name, Thunder lifted his head and looked in their direction. The setting sun shone on his now glossy and healthy coat, turning him momentarily into an almost mythical figure. "I think we can still learn a lot from him," said Robert, raising his cup in a silent toast to the animal that had changed his life forever. The end of the story. Dear listener, if this story touched your heart as it touched mine while telling it, leave your like and subscribe to the channel. Share with us in the comments. Do you believe animals like Thunder can truly understand and forgive? Your opinion is valuable to us as we continue bringing heartfelt stories like this one.